Player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. Ashen King Mont hit global today, and so wasting no time at all doing the character review for the brand new and final of the Ashen Warriors as part of the Crystal Warrior collaboration, however they want to call it. But today's character review, pretty standard things. The overview, we're going to go through the stat analysis, the report card, the new player perspective, my general thoughts. We're going to go through the job a little more intricately with the passives, counters, auto priority, things of that nature. His TMR review, the job-based vision card eligibility, very important for King Mont. The general optimization pieces, I have one sample building and then some Truststones. So kicking things off here, brand new Earth unit added to the game with the unique main job of Ashen King. He's also got the Nightblade and Pugilist subjobs. He is part of the Sword Knight class, which I'm going to do a smaller, deeper dive on soon here, which not a class that we see quite frequently. And so there is some asterisks attached to him because of that. He does equip armor, helmet, accessories with a move of 3, jump of 1 as a 100 cost unit. I think he's fine at 50 faith. He does have a very important silence potential as a status affliction, but it comes in at usually anywhere from the 25 to 50% chance to proc. He does have blind technically on one of the subjobs, so you could go a little bit higher if you really wanted to nail down that status effect, but I don't think you need to. I think 50 is fine, but the asterisk, it's worth thinking about. Now, the max range of his main job is 5 squares away, only 1 AoE and 3 single target abilities. He is a single target monster. Just recapping the dream ability here at the top 2, he's got 20 debuff weakening, 30 reaction block rate, and 15 crit evade from a weapon type resistance, 25% to slash, 15 to magic as his 2 highest. He's 10% to strike, neutral at 0% to missile, and then the minus 10% to pierce being the only negative weakness there. And then from an ailment perspective, 50% to poison, which sure, we do see a pretty good uptick in here. 50% to stun, obviously that really just like shuts down VV very easily for many regards, but there's not a lot of stun outside of that. And then 10% to blind, maybe slightly more niche, but not the worst one in the world. So the mastery ability, this is where things start to ramp up for uniqueness to him. He's got 20 slash res pen permanently, 10 AoE res permanently, but the big thing here is that he has an increased chance to apply silence by 25% if he's got an AP restore active, like AP up per turn like Zizabel's, and he does have a buff in his kit that does that. So when you use the ability with silence applied to it, he's got an extra 25% chance added to it. We'll dive more into that soon, but that's part of the mastery ability. And so kicking things off with the total or the base stat analysis here, base HP is exceptionally high. He is right there amongst the top in the game, even tanks included, way above the 75th percentile. It is much higher category of units that, yeah, we are seeing a lot of new units land up in. So he is right there as that new bar for base HP. The same thing for base attack. I actually had to add the category here on this, histogram grouping at the top that he is the highest base attack in the game at 465. Very much a major strength of his, and he will get very naturally high attack levels because of it. Base agility also above average here. He's at 59, which is that 75th percentile. He's in that higher grouping of buckets, so it doesn't mean a ton right now, and obviously will scale maybe by like a point or two difference when you start adding the vision cards, but definitely a nice thing for base agility starting off. The base dexterity is also very much above average. He is, not off the charts. I wouldn't call him a crit rate monster like we do to some units, but base dexterity is certainly very strong. He's definitely way above where most units end up. I'm overall very happy with the dexterity rate. We'll see more about that in the crit rate in just a couple slides. The base luck also very much above average in this higher grouping where he is very accurate as a unit overall. This does also help his pseudo evasion angle that older units might miss once in a while if you're not prepared for it. But the total stat analysis, this is those 5 charts kind of transformed into one, looking at his stats relative to other units. There's really no weaknesses here from a base stat perspective. Everything looks very good. Total stat perspective, a slight step back on the attack where they don't really give him as much from an attack stat perspective on the board. But honestly, that doesn't matter. His attack stat is still absolutely amazing in total when you build him out. But the agility, the dexterity, the luck, all very good stats here from the board perspective. Obviously, the HP being as high as it is also very much a pro for him. And the agility, there's one caveat that he does not have any agility boosting passive. So he starts off at that 83 or 84 roughly with the 2 vision cards applied in the main sub and sub slot. He ends up being very fast innately, but once you start adding in characters that can add their passives, he's still very fast, but not top of the charts. He's really just kind of stuck here at that amount, which it's a respectable number. I'm pretty happy with the total agility, all things considered. The crit hit and crit avoid, he does have some crit rate nodes on his board that does amplify his crit rate percentage overall. I'm very happy with this 100% starting spot. Most units end up, 20 to 30% lower than that. He certainly is not that kind of unit, and is very important for his follow-up attack, where crit damage on a follow-up attack exponentially, not exponentially, it basically doubles in most instances the total damage done. So crit rate is very important for the follow-up attack. And crit avoidance rate, he's got that 15% on his 140 or his mastery ability. That does put him a fair bit above where most characters end up innately for crit avoidance. Again, stats are looking very healthy here. The accuracy perspective, innately speaking, is one of the most accurate units in the game. He's got 2 different passives to equip, which put him, I think, either number 1 or at least top 3 for most accurate units in the game. You'll realistically only have one of those 2 passives equipped. You very likely wouldn't have both, but when you do have that one passive equipped, he's essentially top of the charts for accuracy. So does not have a guaranteed hit in the kit, but he does have an ability that's got the extra 30% hit chance applied to it. So net effect, all accuracy is very good for him. And then the evasion angle, because of that high luck stat, because of the agility value being a little bit above average, he is kind of like a pseudo evade unit that he does technically fall in this gradient of where you might, miss an attack. I'll be honest, I think in the current power creep of the game, when you're going against the Jooms of the world, A2 is innately very accurate. I don't think you're going to be making a lot of characters miss on you, but against some of those older characters that aren't properly geared for it, you put some luck into him, and you certainly could with what Earth has and with what Sword Knight has for vision cards. He might surprise you and dodge a couple hits here and there. And we segue into the report card here now. Effective HP is an A. Only 2 defense, only 10 AoE res. This looks a little bit subpar compared to normal, but his health pool itself is so high, with some very good resistances, all things except that negative 10% to pierce, that the effective HP is an A. He is among the highest in the game. This is really just kind of power creep driven for the HP level. The survivability also going A plus here. He's got 35% AoE wide res on a buff, 25 unit res, a 4 hit 50% physical barrier, and he's got his own version of barrier seal as well. He's got courage, a 50% heal back, 20 debuff weakening innately, which could technically be 40% debuff weakening with a passive. So survivability is excellent for what most units have. Very happy with that in conjunction with the effective HP. The damage, also an A plus here. You can hit 100 slash pen and def pen with some vision card support. He's got a huge attack stat. The follow-up attack damage certainly can't be discounted. He's got an unbelievable unit resistance crush. 2 different kinds technically. One's an actual imperil, one is a crush, and he's got physical barrier break. So he's got every tool you could possibly want to do the damage that he needs to. The agility is also a B plus here. He's at that 84 versus 78 average when you start including units that can equip passives. 84 versus 81, still a little bit above there. So I'm overall pretty happy with that final agility stat. The accuracy is an A plus, exceptional accuracy with the extra percentage hit chance on the 120 ability. The evasion is also a B here. The evade potential is there when gearing for it. Movement, though, is a D. There's no movement altering abilities, not the end of the world, but no jump capabilities and no extra move +1 capabilities, even in the Subjobs from a buff perspective. The auto ease of use, I'm going with an A minus here. The hardest thing, stat-wise, he's amazing. Kit-wise, he's amazing, but the team building is actually kind of tough, and I'm going to circle back on this, but the kit is absolutely loaded to the gills. The AI is very straightforward. The damage is very easy to achieve, but the actual X's and O's of putting a team together might be difficult for some players. The game disruption, I am going with an A plus though. He's a grossly exceptional unit that will rock the top end of the game. People that really can min-max him and have a lot of resources available to them. He is a stellar unit from that regard. The passives, I'm going with a B plus here. Very good passives. Nothing out of this world, but really perfect for what he needs. The counter abilities, I'm going with an A here. He's got a sneaky good sleep counter that we'll talk about more in depth soon. The overall job in kit is an S for me. It's a nigh perfect. Does more than I could possibly list off the top of my head in terms of totality. We'll see that soon when we go through the job and kit overview for a final grade of an S. This is a meta-defining unit that sets the bar for whom everyone else in the game should be compared from a character evaluation perspective. Him and Joom are both the same kind of tier of units doing so. But for the new player perspective, I'm actually going with a thumbs down as a no for a pull verdict, which might fly in the face of everything we just said. The Earth permanent pool units are very subpar. It's Melnia, who's probably the best one. Miraga, you can get part of the selection quest, and Oberyn, that's really it. All those other Earth units are part of collabs or limited. The Vision card support is rather excellent in my opinion, though. They have some great Dark Espers, a lot of really good just other general Vision cards as part of that permanent pool. Sword Knight as a class, those units are exceptionally underwhelming in the permanent pool. It's really like Engelbert and Winged Stern, and both of those units are very difficult to use, or at least Engelbert is. Very difficult to use at the top end of the game, or really any kind of like a top end competitive space. The vision cards for Sword Knight are very good, but overall I would say limited application because the team building is a little bit harder for this group. So, you have some good vision cards here from the permanent pool perspective, but again, the team building from that angle can be difficult. So, although he is a very strong meta defining unit, the team building around him is tough. And so, as a new player, I think it might be difficult for you to really get the most out of him. I will say, I think from a power creep perspective, it's still an overall relatively good investment for your level of competition of who you normally play against. He's probably going to do great, quite honestly. But when you talk about, a new account and the viz expenditure of saying like maximizing the application of all the units you could get and how often you could use them and how long they'll carry you for. I think you could probably get better mileage out of your Vizier elsewhere, but he's obviously still an S tier unit. I know that seems in direct conflict with my final grade, but I do think this is more of like a veteran kind of character overall. Now, my general thoughts, fully loaded kit of utility. The 60% unit res crush. He's got a flat 20% imperil on the limit break, 35% wide AoE to himself and teammates, same with 25 unit res. He can dispel haste and follow-up attacks to enemies, so not only is that good for facing other King Monts, but great for strike meta, where a lot of those strike units have those follow-up attacks, same with Bart's, technically. He has 50% silence effect if AP restores on, the physical barrier break, which also has 50 healing power down on it. He's got great offensive potential, the attack stat, the follow-up damage, two different kinds of imperils, the barrier break, the penetrations. Just pausing to talk more about these, they are great. You need a slight investment to get him to 100 on both, though. The defense pen, you get 40 on a passive, 30 after a buff, and 10 from a Truststone passive, so you're sitting at 80 defense pen there. The Dark Titan Vision card that is in the future coming next week or the week after will give him another 23 to get him to 100. You could go Ultros to still get to 100, but you need one extra thing somewhere to get him to 100. So just laying that math out. The Slash Res pen, 20 innately, 30 from an attack that when you use attack, he gets 30%. You get 20 from his weapon, so you're sitting at 70 right there. A vision card would be anywhere from another 18 to 35%, so that's really the external investment you would need to get him to 100 slash res pen. But relatively speaking, 80 defense pen and 70 slash res pen is certainly still very, very good. An anti-AP angle is definitely some counterplay for him. No secret here from what we've seen from the JP side, that the Veritas of the Wind TMR, which is like a AP dispel and AP down, works very well to counter him. That he's got no acquired AP or reduce AP cost in his kit, that you can counterplay him a little bit by dipping into his AP pool. Obviously more to see as that happens in global. I will say again, it's extremely difficult to team build around him, despite being a bonkers good unit. I think personally the Ice Earth synergy that's coming in a week with Dark Titan as well is probably the best synergy, where there are already another Dark Golem card for Ice and Earth to overlap. I think Aldoa specifically is probably, if you're min-maxing your team, one of the better units to give him that physical damage mitigation as well. But Mono Earth certainly is serviceable too. And the last point is the 50% silence when the AP is active is a massive counterplay to many of the uptick in magic scaling tanks. As of late, Volk, Aldoa, and Dario can all be silenced by him quite easily, and even the older ones like Raph and Dialdo, who were staple tanks for a long time, can get silenced. So he's got some really interesting angles going into that matchup too that gives him some good value. Well, let's get through the jobbing kit here now. The passive abilities, Strength to Reach God is the best one here. That's the heal back, it's the defense pen, the attack percent. Nightblade Mastery is personally my second favorite one here for the extra 30% attack and the accuracy, just to have the accuracy active all the time. But certainly Power to Protect Family, that debuff weakening is very, very nice. But I don't really see much upside with the others. Obviously the attack stat on Warrior Spirit is kind of redundant with the other two here. The HP is nice, but I don't like that without the debuff weakening personally. Now the counter abilities, Edge of Slumber is very cool. This is a 30% chance to do some damage after you've been attacked, with the caveat that after you do your damage, you have a 35% chance to inflict sleep. It's kind of the asterisk on the faith number there, right? The benefit of this is that now that Helena is kind of washing away from the meta, a lot of people aren't gearing for that sleep resistance anymore. And so although a lot of newer units do have some innate sleep resistance, a lot of older units don't. And so there's a good chance that he'll counter you, put you to sleep, and then when you are asleep, that means you'll take 50% more damage when you're hit. So it's the kind of thing that, yeah, he'll take some damage, he'll put you to sleep, and sure, maybe you'll miss a turn because of it, but more importantly, the next time you get attacked, you're going to take more damage because of it. So that's a really nice wrinkle to how he affects the battlefield. The main job buffs, we talked about a lot of this already. It's the 4 time and it's 4 turn for all of these. 50% physical barrier, the 35% AoE wide resistance, the 25 unit res, the seal barrier break for 4 turns on himself only. He does have courage with the 10% AP restore. This is also where the extra 30 defense pen comes in if you have courage or AP restore active. These are both exceptional buffs in their own right. From the main job perspective, all 4 of these are earth scaling / scaling physical type attacks. 3 of them are unit scaling. 1 of them is the AoE. I've already outlined most of the utility on this. He's got 2 different select 2s, the unit res crush, the / res pan. The chance to inflict silence is here on twofold reaver. This second ability here is the physical barrier break. The AI is really going to determine which ability of these he uses based upon whether the enemy has a barrier that can be broken or not. So they're kind of duplicative in nature in that there is some overlap there, but overall, it's the kind of thing that you can't really get around the damage that he does. But this main job is absolutely awesome for what it brings for damage, for utility with the Dispel Haste, that low AP ability, the CT Restore, we've seen how popular that is with King Bradley and how good that can be. We look at the Limit Break. This is exceptional. This is where another Select 2. The only other downside I think that I just didn't mention was a lot of these are height of 1, which kind of limiting when you look at some of the map topographies. It's not the end of the world, but height of 1 is definitely a little more inflexible than compared to what we've seen for some of the other attack capabilities as of late, and the Limit Break is no exception. 1 height as well. This is a 20% flat unit imperil. It's also haste to himself. I didn't even mention that yet. 240% typeless damage, so will not scale off any kind of weapon type resistance, and adds in the follow-up attack to all his abilities, which that follow-up attack damage gets amplified by his unit res crush and imperil here. So there's a lot of times where even in my tests today that I've seen him use it, that he's hitting people for like 5,000 damage on this follow-up attack because he's imperiled their unit res so much. For the Ashen King sub job here, I actually like this one, just generally speaking. Shimmer Wave, is kind of whatever. I don't think I like it better than the low AP ability, but I like the blind capability here, where, if you are stacking a lot of luck in that team, not that he's an evade unit, but all of a sudden, if you blind an enemy somehow, you've just drastically increased your odds of avoiding some attacks. I do like this sub job, because I don't know if I love these other ones. Nightblade, I don't think anything here offensively adds to the sub job we just looked at. I think concentration is the only unique buff, but even then, I see this more for like class match and some free match things where you can better tailor your opening buff rotation, because I don't like this buff better than the starting 2, but if you have the chance to like manipulate your starting position and really like tailor your turn order a little bit, you might be able to get this one off, because relatively speaking, I like the effects on this buff. I think it's an interesting angle to add this ability, and where most Nightblade units don't get this buff in there. And then the Pugilist subjob, this one that, we've seen the uptick in strike resistance. Overall, the brawl capability of these abilities with, recovering some of the HP, I don't think is enormous. It's fine, but there's some limitations here. I don't necessarily think it's better than that main subjob that we just looked at. Now for the Team R review, this is an armor, which does have some nice double digits for both defense and spirit, which means both of those Truststone sets will go very well on this. This is another excellent Team R from the 4-turn perspective. It's that Human Killer 25, which is great for things like follow-up attacks. It's the 20 AoE res, and then 25% strike res as well. I don't see a lot of upside for this, quite honestly. Not that this isn't a good buff. There's 3, pretty decent buffs on it, but TMRs nowadays are so often reliant on the agility values that they bring. It's not really about the skill themselves, and this is probably a little more niche than your average one, but certainly nice for how unique it is for a piece of armor. Let's put it that way. Now the job-based vision cards. This is where things get difficult for Sword Knight. There's really not a lot of good options for job capabilities right now. The Bloody Road, which is the Melnia vision card, is probably the best one because of the unit res and the agility on it. And from that angle, Gun and Mace are automatically two great potential synergies, but Mace units have definitely seen a downward trend with the magic meta subsiding, and Gun units have never really been all that amazing as of late. So these are the two weaker classes, all things considered. Sword Warrior does have some decent overlap from the unit and agility perspective. There's also some good just like natural slash synergies with those two. But Sword Warrior and Sword Knight are kind of one dimensional in who they are as units. So it's kind of like an unbalanced team in some sense if you're going very heavy on Sword Knight and Sword Warrior. The rest of them, Fists at least has some good offensive cards in common. And the same thing with the Axe. Lord of Hallowed Eve is a very good agility vision card. These are like one or two vision cards away from having some decent overlap. And this is where I'm going to bring up JB's vision card spreadsheet. The units in particular, the cast of characters here, very one dimensional. A lot of them are very much power crap. I would find it difficult to make any kind of Sword Knight team that'd be very competitive with the other team building options, at least current day. Obviously, King Mont is the kind of unit that can change tomorrow if they add in another unit that goes very well, or another vision card that can really bridge the gap between the Sword Knight class and one of these other ones that doesn't currently exist. Now, for the general optimization, pretty straightforward. The Ashen Mortifer, which is his weapon, I do like this weapon. This is a 5% alt element res, the free 30 reaction block rate, and the 20 slash res pen. I think that's my favorite sword overall, but Blood Sword is certainly interesting because it gives him the 10 AP to start. It does give him some additional, health regen options. It's not the worst concept in the world, but even the Mythgraven Blade, which we haven't used in quite some time from like popular team building, this one has a permanent decrease of AP consumption in it, which we mentioned is kind of like a small weakness of his that I don't hate this angle either. I don't think either of these swords are necessarily better. Objectively speaking, I'm fine with Ashen Mortifer, but I'm open to testing with both of these swords as well. The other equipments, honestly, I'm cool with the Maximilian armor. I see no reason to use anything else, but Alex Ring and Brigandine certainly are good top tier items and accessories to use as well. The pod one's certainly good for agility and what they bring for unit and AoE res. The Esper is pretty standard for the DPS. Dark Odin, Bahamut, Odin, Dark Siren, Ultros, that's like the golden 5 for me for any of my damage dealing units. But Dark Titan that is incoming is the probably best in slot Esper for him overall. I can't understate that one. But I do think Dark Golem and Titan, good old fashioned Earth Espers, aren't the worst either. Dark Golem is certainly more of a tankier Esper for him with the human res. It's not as high as in the attack stats, but it's got the defense. The Titan Esper here, though, is like extra accuracy nodes. It's got some Earth attacks, so it's kind of like a different conceptual build. It's got some Spirit nodes on there for him, too. And then the TMRs, not a TMR unit for me. I would pick the one with the fastest agility and just roll with that and just use his two main job buffs, quite honestly. But that brings us now to the sample build, and I'm only showing one today because, again, I don't feel very confident in the Sword Knight build, so I don't want to show something that I don't really think is feasible. And this is really more just for like seeing stats anyways when you kind of load up a team. But I'm using this in Guild Wars today, actually, on this brand new map. I'll see if I can post a replay later. It seemed to do relatively well. It was beating a handful of stuff earlier. There is some, duplicativeness here in the agility in the sub-slot vision cards. So you could probably play with that a little bit in terms of which vision cards you use. But this team build for Mono Earth, he's past that 13,000 HP mark, 35 defense, 18 spirit, 1700 attack. For those of you stat nerds, again, this isn't even reincarnated at all, so these stats will go higher. 114 agility, certainly very serviceable agility number overall. 27 unit res and 30 AoE res, certainly nice. I wouldn't say those are crazy stats, though. Those are definitely a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing. But 82 reaction block rate. He's got an absolute slew of modifiers here. 105 earth attack, 25 slash attack, 46 human killer. Decent enough penetrations, the 50 defense pen. Again, that'll go up with a buff, and the weapon penetration will also go back up with an ability once he uses that mid-fight also. 35% debuff weakening, and effective HP wise, pretty high, not as high as Volk or Oldoa, obviously, which do have higher unit and AoE res innately, and the AoE wide res as well. But starting stats are not the end of it, because a lot of those stats get imperiled nowadays by units like King Mont. And so overall, I'm pretty happy with this effective HP snapshot form as well. And so just last thing here for the Trust Stones, HP, Defense, or Spirit, again, per usual, I think all of those are very valuable. I would go with the HP and the Luck, the standard 2 element res, 2 different status effects. The right side, either agility or aim, depending upon the meta you're in, but he's probably accurate. You might not need the aim for now until we get a really busted evade unit. But from the right side, assuming you have the Ashen Mortifer equipped, I like the attack and the defense pen, the acquired AP and the dexterity. A slash attack and earth attack, I've went full offensive here. I don't have a problem with having healing power 10 in there either because he does have the heal back. I'm not against having that. You could certainly put healing power 10 in for one of these modifiers at the bottom if you really wanted to. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. But the reaction block is already on the Mortifer, so isn't the slash res pen. But should you unequip this and use something else, you might have to consider these Truststone passes. But I think roughly speaking, I think you're pretty comfortable with these. But that is the Ashen King Mont character review altogether. Again, a grossly exceptional unit who, it's not for everyone, and even then, it's not perfect to this level of dominance that Joom is going to have, where Joom obviously has way more self-sustain, way more synergy with ice and water, way more with Greatsword for what they have available, that Ashen King Mont, from where Earth stands at the moment and where Sword Knight stands, he's starting from a little bit of a hole compared to her. But overall, from like a straight character analysis perspective, this is a stellar character that I'm going to be comparing all other units to in the next couple months. But that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll talk to y'all later.